control. I just got on. Oh, not on call. No, I'm not. I got off. Oh, okay. My pants vibrate up in the car.
Call wait for one man. So, this time I'll call the meeting of the Marshall City Council to order with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome everyone here this evening. We'll move to agenda item number 2, which is to consider the agenda. We have before us changes to that agenda. Glenn, I believe you have one item you would like pulled from the agenda.
Number 8, please.
So we will, if it's okay with the council, we will remove agenda item number 8 from the agenda.
Mr. Amir, I move to approve the agenda with the pulling of item number 8.
Motion by Steve. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by David. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Agenda item number 3. Agenda item number 3 is consider the approval of the minutes of the work session that was held on June 27th, as well as the minutes of the regular council meeting that was also held on June 27th. The council does have the minutes of both of those meetings. Are there any corrections to note?
I move approval.
Second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Jim. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Agenda item number 4. Agenda item number 4, Broadmoor first edition. We will have a public hearing on the preliminary plat. Following that, we will consider the approval of the preliminary plat as well as the approval of the final plat. I'll call on Glenn Olson, Director of Public Works, City Engineer, to conduct this public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The plat as shown is located at the eastern corner of Genesis Road and Scott Street. It includes a bit of existing lot and an additional 50 feet of property located within Broadmoor Valley, the manufactured home court. What the property owner wishes to do is to make this lot large enough for the construction of one or more family units. Later on, you'll have an item for rezoning of that easterly 50 feet to R2, which is 1 to 4 family residence units, and included a ingress and egress easement for the development of a portion of this lot, and re-subdividing or redeveloping this lot into at least 2 lots with this access road serving the northerly portion of the lot. It will not be a public street. This is an access easement, a platted access easement only. This has been the Planning Commission and recommended for approval, and we'd take any other questions the public might have or council might have.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. We'll open up for public comment as part of the public hearing. First, anything from the council? Any member of the audience here wish to comment? Glenn, you have?
Just a quick question here on, do we want to encourage access by private easements, or does the city have a policy where we'd like to have access by streets?
No, we don't. Either one is okay with us. We have several locations in the community where private roadways, private accesses are not only permitted, but we kind of like it when it ends up in a dead end location. I live on one. the cars live on one up by the cemetery. Those types of easements or private uses are just fine with us.
The one by the cemetery is a private one?
Yes, it is.
Really? I didn't know that.
The one coming up to cars. Yep.
Okay.
Any other input as part of the public hearing, either from the council or the audience? That was our motion to close this public hearing.
So moved.
Motion by Steve, seconded by John. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. We'll now consider the preliminary plat of Broadmoor Valley First Edition. That was the subject of the public hearing. Any questions about the preliminary plat?
I move approval.
Second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by David. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. And then the third action then would be the resolution approving the final plat of Broadmoor First Edition. Glenn, any comments about the final plat?
One comment, or a couple of comments. Number one, it's contingent upon the city attorney's review and approval. That's generally for the title review. Dennis? Okay. The other thing is that is informed that taxes are current and up to date, but before filing, he has to pay for the entire years. So probably, if this goes through tonight, I'll probably remind them that it's not just current taxes paid.
Yeah, all taxes due, the second half payment normally paid October 15th would have to be paid at the time of filing. So you have to prepay the second half taxes.
And I would assume also any other fees or charges associated with this action.
Yes. Yeah.
Questions? Motion by David, seconded by Jim. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Agenda item number 5. Agenda item number 5 is the reconstruction bonding. First off, we'll have a public hearing on the street reconstruction bonds, and then we will then consider the resolution. So, Glenn, are you going to conduct
No,
this
I
public
don't
hearing,
have
or
this.
Carla Drown, our finance director, will conduct
Cool.
this public hearing?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So before you tonight is the street reconstruction bonding. This is what we've had in the past, shortly before. It's the maintenance and upkeep of cities, of city streets as a core function of the local government. Each year there's numerous streets that have mill and overlays. This is to extend the life of the street. These methods are cost effective and allowing the streets from deteriorating. So the proposed method of financing for this project is the street reconstruction bond. I've got a PowerPoint, if you'd open that one. The bond type is the same as we used for the Kmart Road and the TED Highway 68 Michigan Road intersection projects. Utilizing this bond type allows us to generate the lowest interest cost for the city. The initial step is for this hearing, and then to approve the 5-year plan. You're going to have to save it and then open it. And Springstead has put this PowerPoint together, and Terry Heaton has previously given this to you at the last time. And this is just about the street reconstruction bonds. The municipality may issue or sell obligations for street reconstructions or bituminous overlays if the streets are constructed in accordance with a street reconstruction plan or overlay of streets in the municipality for the next 5 years. And that plan is part of this as an attachment. The plan is approved by a unanimous vote of all members of the City Council that are present tonight. Following a hearing noticed in the paper, which was previously done on June 30th, so we meet those 10 days. If a petition requested a vote on the issuance is signed by voters equal to 5% of votes cast in the last municipal election, that's filed with the city clerk within 30 days of the public hearing. Obligations issued under this subdivision are subject to the debt limit of the municipality. Street and bituminous overlays include utility replacement and relocation, other activities incidental to the street reconstruction, turn lanes and other improvements having substantial public safety function, realignments, other modifications to intersect with state and county roads, and local share of state and county road projects. For this street reconstruction bond, the proposed principal is in the amount of $400,000 and would be repaid through general levy appropriations. This would be part of a package deal with another bond coming forward in the future regarding the commercial industrial park and Michigan Road. So that we've discussed previously about our commerce industrial park growing, and so that will be coming forward for a bond as well. So we'll hold off on bonding for this amount until we wrap it together with the others. But we need to have this hearing and approval before we can award any bids and move forward. And I will let Glenn explain which roads are being looked at for that mill and overlay project.
I know they're hard to see, but hopefully you've taken a look at these before we've presented this mill and overlay map prior before the authorization to call for bids. So those are the streets that are indicated in red on the map. If you have any questions at all concerning any individual one of them, this is kind of our normal 5-year plan that we utilize, and these are the ones that are on the plan. Now, we also indicated that the bids came in extremely well, so that we've been authorized to maximize the budgeted amount of street mill and overlays. So, but these are the ones that are included in the reconstruction bond.
Okay, thank you, Carla. Thank you, Glenn. We'll open it up as part of this public hearing for any input either from the council or members of the audience. Steve?
Mr. Mayor, I have a question. Carla, what is our municipality debt limit?
I do not know off the top of my head.
I think it's safe to say, though, Carla, we're well under.
We are well under it.
Yes. Glenn, you had a question?
Glenn, in the reconstruction plan handout that we have here, on page 3, I'm just wondering, I don't know if you have that page 3 thing.
I don't. Sorry.
If you want.
Yep.
Is it, I think
No, one more down.
Page 3.
third page, yeah. One more. Is it? I can keep going, I guess. No. It's okay, right under there. At the bottom there, it says not to exceed $1.1 million for the intersection of Trunk Highway 68 and Pacific Avenue in the Commerce Industrial Park for the Kmart entrance. Is it, I mean, it looks like there's something missing in our plan there, doesn't it?
I have a more updated one.
Okay.
I did not realize that it didn't get put in here, as I will get that all out to you guys. It's the general obligation street reconstruction bonds are proposed to be issued in 2017 at an aggregate principal not to exceed $2 million. That $2 million for the intersection of Trunk Highway 68 and Pacific Avenue in the Commerce Industrial Park, for the Kmart entrance road and for 2017 street overlay projects. Such bonds will be combined with other financing tools, including general obligation improvement bonds to finance other capital improvements in the city.
So that's been
So
corrected?
it is $2 million.
Okay, that's what I was wondering about. And so then, do we re-vote on this, or on the amended plan, or just make those changes?
No, the amended plan is what we had
Okay.
in front of you.
It's just that we didn't get the latest version.
Right.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other input as part of the public hearing? If not, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Steve, seconded by Craig. Discussion? Now we'll move to a vote. Motion passes, and then the next action would be the resolution. Any questions about the resolution? Note, as Carla had noted, that for this financing method to go forward, this action does need to be unanimous.
I move the resolution.
Second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by David. Discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Agenda item number 6. Agenda item number 6 then is the Bituminous resurfacing projects for the city. Two actions here. One would be the resolution. One would be the resolution declaring the official intent regarding the reimbursement of the expenditures with the proceeds of tax-exempt bonds, and then the second action would be the resolution that would accept the bid and award the contract for the resurfacing project. Glenn?
Nothing further. The resolution is to award to Dunick Incorporated.
So action number 1 is the resolution declaring the official intent.
I make that motion.
Motion by
Second.
John, seconded by Craig. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes, and then the second action is the resolution that would accept the bid and award the contract for the Bituminous overlays to Dunick Incorporated in the amount of $287,393, but could go up to $325,000.
Maximum.
Motion by Steve, seconded by David. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Agenda item number 7. Agenda item number 7 is also the award of bids. This is the award of bid of the OConnell Street extension. Once again, we have similar actions. The resolution that would declare the official intent regarding the reimbursement of the expenditures, and then the resolution that would accept the bid and award the contract. Once again, Glenn Olson.
This is a project by the old Kmart building, and again, bids came in very favorable. We would recommend award.
Questions about this? If not, is there a motion on the resolution declaring the official intent regarding the reimbursement of the expenditures?
So moved.
Motion by Steve,
Second.
seconded by John. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes, and then the second action would be the resolution accepting the bid and awarding the contract. Are there questions about this?
I move the resolution.
Second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by John. Discussion? Glenn, do you know timing of this, if this is awarded, and also potential coordination with the redevelopment of the remainder of that parking lot by the private owners?
The owners have requested that once they're awarded, that they be notified of who the contractor was that received the job, and they would be contacting them as soon as possible after that award. As far as this project goes, I don't know their intended schedule. I do know in the mill and overlays, the contractor wants to start on that immediately as soon as they get their proper contract things done. But they're wanting to immediately move into the mill and overlays. For this project, I don't know what their schedule is, if they're going to do it right away or they have another job that they've got to move to soon. So they want to do our mill and overlay first. So this one might take a while because we have water main replacement as well. I would expect that this one's going to wait until fall.
Okay. Any other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Agenda item number 8. Agenda item number 8 is was removed from the agenda, so we'll move then to agenda item number 9. Is the consent agenda, if we could bring the items up on the screen on the consent agenda. So on the consent agenda is consider the approval of the rural service district resolution, consider the authorization to declare vehicles as surplus property for the police department, and consider the approval of the bills and the project payment. So is there any item on the consent agenda any member of the council wants removed for purposes of separate discussion?
Your Honor, I would move approval of the consent agenda. Second.
Motion by Steve, seconded by Craig to approve the items on the consent agenda. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Move to the next agenda item after the consent agenda. Which is the agenda item number 13. This is the Highway 23 improvement update. With us tonight is the representative from SRF Consulting Group, and I will ask Glenn Olson to introduce this topic and then turn it over to Leif.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor and Council. And I don't know, Mark, did you want to be in the presentation as well, or are you letting him handle it?
I'll let Leif.
Oh, okay. But Leif Garnis is a representative from SRF Consulting that's doing the consulting work for MnDOT. The safety projects that we've had along Highway 23 have been extensive and well received by MnDOT. This one is involving the latest round of safety improvements, and I think I'll just let Leif take it from there.
So welcome, Leif.
All right. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Mayor and Council. So again, my name is Leif Garnis. I'm with SRF Consulting Group. I'm here with Mark Klima with MnDOT, and we're here to talk about the intersection improvements along Highway 23 in Marshall and provide the council with an update on the progress. So we just want to do a quick overview of where we've been. As you know, we completed an assessment in 2016 where extensive public outreach went into our assessment to identify improvements for Highway 23. Since that assessment has been completed, progress has been made in obtaining funding for improvements in 2018 as well as in 2019, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. Just also wanted to let you know that as we proceed with these improvements, that ongoing outreach will be completed with the public to educate them on the progress of our work, as well as bringing them back up to speed with where we left off with the assessment, as well as carrying that through and helping them understand potential impacts during construction. Click a few more here, please. So just to remind everyone of what the initial goal was of our assessment back in 2016, and that was ultimately to improve the corridor or the safety of the Highway 23 corridor in Marshall. And by doing that, we were also wanted to accommodate not only today's traffic, but we understand that development is expected around Highway 23 and across Highway 23, and that we need to make sure that what we recommend can accommodate that. Also, we wanted to make sure that we were accounting for not just cars, but for trucks and peds and bikes, and making sure that everyone was accounted for. And then lastly, we were tasked with developing a plan, long-term plan to fund improvements for the corridor, knowing that improvements everywhere can't be done at once. Our assessment partners with that was MnDOT, Lyon County, the City of Marshall, and the Marshall Transportation Group. Just wanted to remind the group here what we heard through our public outreach, and I wanted to point out two main things here. The first one being the top three concerns that we heard from the public, and that was number one, safety at intersections was a concern. Number two, access to, from, and across Highway 23 was a concern. And then number three, travel speeds. Throughout our outreach, we also asked for input on priorities. So where is your number one concern along Highway 23? With that, our top five locations included County Road 7 first, Lyon Street second, Highway 59 third, Tiger Drive fourth, and Highway 19 fifth. Next slide, please. Thank you. One more. All right, so taking the input we received from the public as well as the technical work that was completed, we did develop our buckets of priority moving forward and on how to improve safety. The first set of priorities was to implement improvements at County Road 7, as well as implement improvements at Lyon Street and Clarice Avenue. Obviously, at the time of the assessment, that was contingent on the funding sources and how we would fund these improvements. Thank you. Our second set of priorities was to look at improvements at 4th Street and Tiger Drive. And then as we start to implement improvements along Highway 23, to just reevaluate how safety has been improved or changed, and as well as the other issues that we heard. And then lastly, we did look at several other locations that could benefit from access restrictions long-term if there was a need for that. So here's a graphic that we used with the public to help explain the process that we have to go through to implement improvements. The first step in that process was the planning process, and that was the assessment that was completed in 2016. So where we're at today is we're actually designing improvements at two locations, at County Road 7 and at Lyon Street. And so this process includes going through the environmental documentation and developing the construction plans that can go out for bid. And then as far as construction goes, we have two projects planned, one in 2018 and one in 2019. The mechanism for funding these projects is the Highway Safety Improvement Program, HSIP for short. And this is a federal program that is used to address locations with crash issues.
We may get to this later in your presentation, but the 2018 and 2019, those are fiscal years, so both projects that you're going to describe could happen next summer.
I'll just let Mark answer that. But
yeah, right now the intersections at Lyon and County Road 7 are scheduled for a March 2018 letting date. So yes.
So one would be advanced from the 2019
yes.
budget.
Yep. So that's the plan.
Yep. All right. One important thing to note is that this funding was made possible because these are cost-effective solutions for the type of safety issues we were experiencing. So the next two slides just illustrate the funded projects. The first one at County Road 7 is a J-turn, so this is similar to Saratoga Street, where we are restricting access or the left turns from the County Road 7 onto Highway 23, as well as restricting drivers from going straight across from County Road 7 across Highway 23, having them go down and make the U-turns to go to their destination. The one thing to point out with County Road 7 is we have in the current plan right now to maintain the acceleration lane heading west out of town. That was something we heard from the public that was a benefit for the corridor. At Lyon Street, again, a J-turn was funded for this location. This also included access restriction at Clarice Avenue, where we also had crash issues. So as I mentioned, our process here includes significant public outreach and education as we move forward here. So the first thing we're doing here is giving an update to the government officials. So we're also meeting with the Lyon County Board to give them an update on our progress. Our first public open house is set for next Wednesday from 5 to 6:30 p.m. at the Marshall County Library. We also are planning a second open house in the fall. That will be determined here as we move forward. We are going to be looking to reach out to focus groups again. Those will be determined as we move forward here. Mainly it's going to come from the input that we receive If there's specific questions that need to be addressed by a certain group, that we will go ahead and meet with them and help answer their questions. So through our assessment, we did meet with various focus groups, including freight groups, ped and bicycle groups, and the schools and others to help understand their concerns. Also throughout this process, we will be implementing a lot of online engagement. So newsletters will be provided, educational materials will be included on the website, as well as outreach will be promoted through social media. So just a quick overview of our schedule. We did actually begin this work in the spring and early summer here with developing our preliminary layouts, which I showed a minute ago. So right now we are working on the environmental documentation portion, which is a requirement for the federal funding. We're also completing the final design plans here over the next couple months and into the fall, with anticipated construction as early as early spring and summer in 2018. One thing I wanted to note here is that we will be developing educational tools and videos and so forth for the public to be used. This is an example. We won't play it here, but it's a prior video that has been used to demonstrate how to drive these type of improvements. The other thing we wanted to note here was that recently MnDOT has completed research of these type of improvements throughout the state, of other locations where they have implemented it, and have found that they have been quite successful in addressing the safety concerns that we have on Highway 23. Specifically, they definitely reduce the right angle crashes or the T-bone crashes that we have seen out here. But more importantly, it has reduced fatalities as well as serious injury crashes. So based on the research conducted, we've seen a 70% reduction in fatalities and then a 42% reduction in crashes related to injuries. A couple other items to note here is that as far as being proactive in addressing these safety issues here, that J-turns can be essentially built in a year, so they're pretty quick to be built compared to other improvements such as an interchange, which could take up to as many as 5 years to get built. Also, from a cost standpoint, this is a cost-effective solution that's moving forward compared to a stoplight or interchange, for example. And also, most of the time in these cases, we can construct a J-turn without having to acquire it right away. So that's what we have for you today as far as an update goes. We'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you, Leif. Questions?
Just a quick question. Is there a level of traffic where you go from a J-turn to an interchange where the interchange makes more sense than a J-turn?
There is. It's usually on a case-by-case basis, but a lot of times in this particular assessment, we looked at the cost-benefit of doing an interchange, and so the benefits were just not there to construct an interchange when we can do a J-turn more cost-effectively.
So it's not like interchanges are going to go away. There's still a need for them, just at a higher traffic level, probably. Is that
correct? Yep.
John?
And then clarification on the Clarice Avenue change, its elimination of the turning from would be southbound 23 onto Clarice Avenue. Is that the change that's going in effect there?
So the change that is being effective is if you're coming from Clarice and you're trying to head south on Highway 23, the left turn will no longer be able to be made there.
Yeah,
You'll either have to make it.
So it's going the other way from Clarice on to southbound 23. Okay. So
and what we heard through our outreach was that a lot of people use the light at 59 now as opposed to making a left turn there.
Thanks.
Yep.
I think with the installation of the reduced conflict intersection at Saratoga Street, I know our fire chief is here. Glenn, you can clarify this too, but that opened, I believe, in October of 2015.
Yep.
And since that time, there has been 0 accidents there.
Okay.
Noticeable improvement.
Well, there was horrible accidents there before.
Yeah, they're almost monthly.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you very much for...
All right. Thank you again for your time.
Yep.
Thank you. And also, David, thank you to the Marshall Transportation Group for your leadership on this. That group.
Excellent.
Move then to agenda item number 14. Is the annual report from MarshallLyon County Library. With us tonight is Michelle, so our library director, so welcome.
Thank you for letting me speak to you this evening. Take a few minutes of your time. My name is Michelle Leininger, and as the mayor said, I am the director of the MarshallLyon County Library, and I'm happy to get to present our 2016 annual report to the community. I hope you'll take the time to review that at your leisure, but I want to point out that that's really only half of the story. It's a very important half of the story of what we were able to accomplish, but it really is only half of that. Last year, the board determined that we needed to have a very strong internal organization in order to have the kind of success that you see in that annual report. So in the last year, they've been focused, particularly administratively, to create a strong foundation to build those services. The first thing that they wanted to focus on was to make sure that we were fiscally and administratively sound with strong policies and best practices in place. I'm happy to say we are mostly done with that. We still have a few policies to work on. Secondly, we know that we have to be transparent in all of our actions and intentions to build and grow trustworthiness with funders, customers, taxpayers, and the public in general. And last but not least, we have to be continually responsive to the needs of our community. And because those needs really change at a fairly rapid pace and are constantly shifting, it does mean that we constantly have to review how we're being responsive. Because if we're not, instead we become irrelevant, and we certainly don't want to become irrelevant. So there were 4 areas that the board focused on in the last year, and I'll talk about those briefly. First, and certainly most important, has been the budget. For those of you who were here last year when I spoke to you, we were already in that process of really trying to refine the budget. What's been critically important to the board and myself is that our budget reflects the actual operating costs, so you know what it costs to operate the library. But more importantly, I think all of you know better than most people, budgets tell a story. And we want to make sure that people know the story that the library budget is trying to tell, which means it also has to be very clear and easy to understand. So no one has to have an explanation to understand our budget. And last but not least, we continue to change our practices, constantly looking for cost savings and efficiencies. But operations are really only one piece of that stable budget. The other piece is the reserve fund, and that's also critically important. When the board reviewed the reserve fund at the end of last year, they determined that they wanted to address try to address and lessen the encumbered portion of that, particularly with regard to employee separation liability. And we've tried to do that in 2 ways in the past 6 months. The first is we had a policy change. Staff who accrue vacation are only allowed to accrue no more than 1 year, equal to what they accrue. And the second is they did sunset our severance pay piece of our personnel policy. There were only 3 staff who had triggered that, and they are grandfathered in and they will get that payout. But the rest of us who are current employees and future employees will not have that benefit. The board instead found an alternative and less expensive way to honor longevity amongst our staff. So because of those changes from December of 2016 to now, we have seen over $10,000 shift from our encumbered to our unencumbered part of our reserve fund. The second area that they have addressed is the staff. All the public service jobs have been rewritten. We did reappoint them with an HR professional, and those have all been approved by the board. It did result in 2 people being put in classifications at a lower wage, and the board did vote to move them to their new classification wages, and that resulted in just over $12,200 in savings. So with those savings and the additional funds that we received last year from the city and the county, we were able to onboard earlier this year about 1.7 FTE into the library staff. What that has allowed us to do is, for the public directly, we did open the Marshall building for 2 additional hours on Saturdays. So we're now open for 7 hours. It has allowed staff more time to collaborate with our community partners and seek out more community partners. That includes the other 2 independent libraries in Lyon County. We're also moving forward on our initiatives from our strategic plan. It's a 3-year strategic plan, and we launched that in January. Last, but certainly not least, what it's really allowed us to do internally is to be flexible. We do have 3 buildings to cover, and those 3 buildings have 4 service points, and we were really lacking that, and we now have a little more flexibility. The third area we addressed, and that is this one is probably the one that's most reflective in your annual report that you have there, is the collection. By the end of last year, we were able to finish culling old, dated, and worn materials. With that additional staff that we onboarded, we were also able to review the hundreds and probably almost thousands of donations from our very generous public, and we were able to find great materials in there, and we processed them, and I'm happy to report in 2016 we added more than $7,000 worth of donated materials to our collection. What that allowed us to do was to stretch our budget that we do have designated for the collection to actually build and replace those sparse areas that where we had weeded outdated and poor quality books, and we were able to replace those. I also want to note probably the most impressive data point on the bookmark that you have there on the blue side is our digital checkouts. We had a sharp increase, and that continues to date. We're almost right now, almost double where we were last year at this time in digital checkouts. We also keep an eye on that industry. Just in the last couple of weeks, there's been some significant changes. So again, in an effort to be flexible, we also keep an eye on that particular industry. The fourth area that we addressed is technology. Excuse me. Here, unlike the other areas, we were really mainly in observation and data gathering mode. We wanted to see how people were using the technology in the library, and also, as things change, what we might anticipate we might need. Not long after I started in early 2016, we did add 1 new Wi-Fi access point in the Marshall building. That brought us up to 4. We also upgraded the Cottonwood Wi-Fi, and that gave a stronger signal there. And Ballatin was, at the time, sharing with City Hall down there, and it was causing some problems. So we were able to add an access point for them that is their own. Just over a year later, so about 14 months since we added those, we're already seeing hints that we may need to add another Wi-Fi access point in the Marshall building, and I would anticipate in the next 8 to 12 months we'll probably have to add possibly 2 more. That's how much Wi-Fi is being used at the library. This is due to a couple of reasons. One, as you may all know, your devices are always on. So if you've ever hooked up to our Wi-Fi, as soon as you come into the building, it reattaches you to our Wi-Fi. So there are a number of devices always coming on to our Wi-Fi. There's also been a sharp increase in the last year and a half of people who have devices, laptops, iPads, tablets, all of those kinds of things coming in to use the library. And probably the most significant group that came in were the middle schoolers who last year got laptops. And so they also, after school, come into the library and start using our Wi-Fi. So that's led to 2 direct results. The first is that less people use the library-owned computers because they're using the Wi-Fi. But the second is we've had a sharp increase and people requesting that we add a wireless printing service. Anecdotally, the staff says that probably up to 1/2 of the people who do jump on the library-owned computers are just getting on there to print because we don't have the Wi-Fi printing. Internally, what it's done is it's also changed what has been traditional in libraries, which is a technology replacement plan. Because this is shifting, we don't want to just replace the computers we have. because we don't know that we're going to need that many computers in the next couple of years. We do need to start replacing them, however. They were new to the building, which means they'll be 6 years old. Best practice for public computers means you need to change them every 3 to 4 years. So they're already about 2 years longer, and they are starting to have some issues, and we are spending more time trying to keep them going for the public. So of the 12 general ones that are being used, we are looking to replace 4 of those in 2018. And of course, best practice means that we would replace 4 the following year and 4 the following year. We don't want to say that we'll do that because we don't know. We need to continue to watch how things are shifting. And certainly after we add wireless printing, it could significantly drop the number of people who use our public computers, and there's no need to replace those if it looks like most people mostly need the Wi-Fi and the wireless printing. We do, however, need to replace at least 4 of them because there are, again, we're having problems with those. But the other best practice that libraries have done, again, since 97, since the Gates Foundation gave computers libraries, is that we buy the best computers and the newest computers we can afford for the public. And then as soon as they're pulled off the floor anywhere from 3 to 5 years later, that's when the staff get new computers. We get the repurposed computers. Right now I have 3 staff who are working on computers that they will get to celebrate a 10th anniversary with them next year. We have those from 2008 and they're still working, but we don't know for how long. So of the 4 computers that we replace on the public, we will then repurpose those and they will go to the staff to use those. So in conclusion, for the past 18 months, the staff has been hard at work to develop services and to increase people using the library and having success at finding things and using the library. And that's what you see in the annual report. But the board has also worked hard to provide a solid foundation from which the staff to build those services and to continue to build those services. So I'm pleased to present the 2016 annual report, but it really is only a piece. It is an important piece, but it is only a piece of all the hard work that they've done in the past year. Thank you for your time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Well, thank you, Michelle. Questions?
I have just a few questions here on the budget.
Mm-hmm.
The good news is that contributions were $22,000 in excess of the budget amount, which is good. The problem is with regard to current expenditures, and according to the budget, your expenditures were going to be $845,000, and the library actually ended up spending $887,000.
We did.
So you were $42,000 in excess of the budget amount, which is probably not a good sign. And with regard to capital outlays,
I will say it was a planned thing.
right? But
Good or bad, I won't qualify it as a
Right,
value,
but
but I will say it was planned and discussed before we did it.
And one of the things that you certainly can do as a board is if you feel like expenditures end up being more than what's expected, from time to time you can amend the budget, and it
Sure.
appears you didn't amend it at all.
No, again, that was a planned, and there was a reason for that.
Right, and so you can, if circumstances change, amend the budget. Anyway, the current expenditures were $42,000 in excess of the budget. The capital outlays were $20,000 in excess of the budget. And so what you ended up is spending $60,000 more than the budget. And what happened is the fund balance then went down $60,000, which again is probably not a good sign. So again, my concern is with the budget, keeping an eye on those expenditures, not letting expenditures get out of hand. And
Right, and I guess I would argue they didn't then. I see your point, and I won't attribute the same value that you are, that it was a bad thing. But again, the board very purposely did that, and I'd be happy at any point to talk about the choices that they made. But what I will mention is that it's important that the operation budget is operational. And they did have some money into the reserves specifically for addressing some of the things that were not addressed when they were finishing up the building. And many of those things were for that purpose, and they were one-time expenditures. And so the board determined that that was what the unencumbered portions of the reserve fund was for, and we did spend it that way.
And I'm not saying unfavorable variances are always bad, but they raise questions, and you need to ask questions and find out if there's a good reason for those variances. And you give people the opportunity to explain the variances.
Right.
And if there's a good reason, that's fine.
And I appreciate the question. Yes.
If there's not a good reason, then we need to make corrections. So,
and then it really is a bad sign, and I agree with that.
And that's why we compare budget to actual in these statements, is to see if there are variances, and if there are, why do we have the variances?
Right. Thank you.
Any other input or questions? If not, thank you, Michelle.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
We'll move then to agenda item number 15. Agenda item number 15 is to consider the approval of the mutual aid agreement between the City of Marshall and the Southwest Fire Department Association and the West Central Fire Department Association. With us today is Mark Claith, Marshall Fire Chief, to provide any explanation or answer any questions the council may have about these agreements.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This has been a work in progress for a number of years to get this agreement in place. What this agreement is going to do is going to give us access to 96 fire departments in the Southwest region and the West Central region. And when I say that, it's used for a catastrophic incident that we would have to call in departments and get reimbursement from FEMA. Right now, we have a Lyon County mutual aid agreement, and we've got the West Central, but it's pretty generic. This lays out the charges that would be incurred to the responsible party in a fire situation and also with FEMA. A normal response is 8 hours, and then you start billing after the 8 hours. We've changed that to 5. We had a meeting with both regions, decided we haven't gone to a fire incident or and I'm not going to say a FEMA incident, but for over 5 hours in a long time. So we thought 5 hours is a great number where we wanted to be. You'll also see these are two different associations. And when there's a Southwest region, and that's how the state, we're divided up by regions. The West Central region, the Marshall Fire Department is in that region. These are two separate entities. This agreement is giving us access to those municipalities in that region, along with that region getting our resources in the Southwest region. So it's two separate entities, as you say. And the only reason the association is there is to list those towns in that region. So that's the clarification I want to make. We are in the region, the associations can't enter into agreements with municipalities. We can't do that. So this agreement is going from municipality to municipality, and that's what we're signing with all of the towns that are there. If you look in the back, there is a fee structure, and I don't know if all the attachments are there. The rates that are charged is based on the DNR rates. That's what FEMA likes to see, because it's a constant fee structure. It's increased according to what they do. Our ladder truck, we have a ladder truck. Pipestone has a ladder truck. Worthington has one. Montevideo has one. Well, we wanted to set up a charge for there, and you'll see that there's an attachment. It's $750 for the first hour, and then there's a charge for every hour. So that 5-hour thing went away just because of the cost of that truck and what it takes to run that. We wanted that separate out of there. The hourly rate, there's also an appendix in there. Their hourly rate was a lot lower than what we're actually getting. Some of the departments are getting paid, so we went to the average of the $17.50. And as long as we have these attachments in there, in this document, we can move forward with it. And then when FEMA comes back, and I'm going to use the Cottonwood train incident, there was a lot of gray area with our agreements, and they didn't really want to cover a lot of the costs. So what this agreement is doing is setting us up to be able to go back to FEMA and say, after 5 hours, here are the charges that were incurred by the Marshall Fire Department, the Agmt Fire Department, and any department in the area to get that reimbursement from FEMA. So, and we did send it into the league, and you can see that letter on the back that they had gone through it too. So it's the Southwest and the West Central or West region have both adopted it. You'll see other regions on both sides of us start adopting this. The work is done now, so all they do is change their headings, and there is some grammatical errors that Dennis had pointed out. We'll make those changes in the document that the city will have to present to or to send back to the regions.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you for your work on this. Questions? Greg?
2 comments, and thank you, Mark. One thing I just want to point out, this agreement and the principle of this agreement is very similar to an agreement that the city's in with our water agency resources through Minwarn. Chris Smith, in particular with the League of Minnesota Cities Insurance Trust, was the author of the Minwarn contract, and Chris is a specialist, so that the letter of blessing from him is very significant because, you know, probably the biggest trip to mutual aid agreements is how the liability is carried. I would venture to say that every department that signed on to this is all insured by the same place, the League of Minnesota Cities Insurance Trust, which is a real benefit to us. The second point that I want to make is what Mark addressed with FEMA, and that it's hard sometimes to vision what would be a FEMA incident that involves fire departments on that kind of a deployment. But the Cottonwood train derailment changed the cargo on that train to another common cargo that runs up and down the rail, and that turns into a multi-day and potentially weeks-long incident that could easily use these types of levels of resource. And then that FEMA potential reimbursement, even though there's a responsible party to go back and get the money from, that takes years, and for FEMA to step in and reimburse the communities and then take that financial recovery on themselves is significant for us. So thank you, Mark, and I think this is great. I know you've been working on it a while, and thank you.
Other questions?
Just a couple of questions here. I noticed that in the signature part it says city manager, administrator, clerk. Just for our purposes, would then the city clerk be the one who does it, or the administrator? In the first page, it talks about party being a local government or a nonprofit organization that contracts with local government. I guess I'm wondering what would be the nonprofit organization that would be a party here.
There is some fire departments. I'm going to use the Watson Fire Department. They are not. That's a privately held fire department. They're not a municipality. The township donates money to those, but they're also in our with the city.
Okay. Does this include the tribes too?
Yes, because Granite Falls is
right.
Yeah,
because they're part of that is they're granted the lower or the upper Sioux agency doesn't have their own fire department, so technically the reservation part of that is a sovereign nation, and that requires some other federal, because we as a state can't engage with them. We have to engage them through the federal government. So that's another reason why there has to be the FEMA piece.
And then with Granite covering that,
yes,
we go in under Granite
under
versus
Granite Falls.
Not under the lower.
Item number 3 on page 1, it talks about that if they're not part of this group and they withdraw, they have to give 30 days notice prior to termination of the agreement. I mean, I'm wondering if that's the correct term. The agreement's not terminating; they're just withdrawing from the agreement.
Well, when they withdraw from the agreement, there's no longer access to the mutual aid of the other cities.
Right, but the agreement is not terminating.
No.
I'm just wondering about that language.
Just the department.
Right, and so I'm wondering if the language in part 2 and 3 should be similar for those that are members and those that are not members, as far as if they use the exact same language as far as what they need to do to withdraw, maybe. And the other thing I was going to ask about is I know the city attorney had mentioned some changes that probably should be made, some slight changes. I'm just wondering if those changes are going to be incorporated in the final agreement?
Well, the realistic approach, these agreements have already been sent out, and they've already got about 50 of them back. So we can make the grammatical changes on ours, but changing the verbiage in there, and we're probably not going to be doing that.
And I'm just quickly looking, is there any termination date on this agreement? It just keeps going?
Well, Councilman, the first agreement that was put in place was put in about 16 years ago when I took the chief, and that's the last time it's been updated.
So it could last a long time?
It'll last a long time.
Okay, thank you.
They're automatically renewing unless you withdraw.
Yep. You know, and there, we might have to come back, if the fee structure's through DNR, you know, re-adopt the agreement for those fees, so.
Any other questions? If not, again, thank you, Mark. I would entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the entering into the mutual aid agreement, the City of Marshall, the Marshall Fire Department with the Southwest Fire Department and the West Central Fire Department Associations.
I'll second it.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Steve. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Agenda item number 16. Agenda item number 16, consider the approval of the resolution that would regarding the extension of the existing cable television franchise agreements with Vast Broadband and Charter Communications period of time through December 31st, 2017. Dennis?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Since we're on the subject of long-term agreements, we just finished, Mr. Clay said 16 years ago, we're about at 12 or 13 years on a 10-year agreement with both cable providers. We've had ongoing discussions, but this whole area is technologically changing. By the time I think we get an agreement in place, the technology has changed. So notwithstanding the fact that there really isn't an agreement in place, both cable groups have continued to make payments pursuant to the old agreement. Those funds have been used to enhance the delivery of the cable services locally. Mr. Brian Grogan, he represents most of the cities in Minnesota. I thought we had a deal in place a couple years ago using the St. Cloud model, but that's off the table. Now we're trying to use the Rochester model to incorporate these various agreements. So we're just asking, let's extend the existing agreement, and hopefully by the end of the year we'll have new agreements in place for either 5 or 10-year extension.
And there does need to be two separate motions on this, one for Vast and one for Charter.
Yeah.
I do have a quick question on this. As I was reading through this, this is just for the 2 cable TV franchise, correct?
Correct.
So how do satellite providers?
They provide from the sky. They're not part of this.
Yep. They're not. They get an advantage over our brick and mortars then, per se.
Because they're not using the public right of way to deliver their service.
To deliver their, yes.
Right.
We're using public airways.
But those are free.
Okay.
Not regulated.
Free by license.
Yeah, we control the ground. We don't really control like that.
That is a point, though, in the small cell wireless, that there is some discussion about those being deployed on public right-of-way, too. So right now, they're not regulated, so it's a good point.
Well, I know Alex Peterson, who's in charge of a lot of this, he was at a presentation where Mr. Grogan talked about all of these changes. So, yeah, there's more. You'll see a lot different agreement, I think, when we're done, and no longer the 35-page agreement with 20 pages of attachments. During that discussion we had a week ago with Mr. Grogan that I had, I can address the legal issues, but the technology of what they're, we're recording things in high def, and we have to downgrade it to be played on the existing system coming in. And we just need to technologically make sure that we're at the forefront of what's available.
Well, and what spurred this is I was looking at my cable bill, and I think it's $40 a year that I pay myself in franchise fees, because I think it's $350 a month is what the city franchise fee was. So I was just looking at, that's being a good citizen having cable, I'm paying an extra $40. Where, how do we make it more competitive for our Charter and Vast who have facilities here in Marshall? Is what I was running through my mind on all that.
Dennis, if I'm understanding, these serial delays are caused not by any stubbornness or uncooperativeness, but just you're aiming at a moving target in terms of the technology. Is that the gist of it?
I think that's a very good explanation.
Okay. Yes. And second, once we finally do get down to brass tacks of negotiating, we'll be insisting on the if I remember this, I was part of those negotiations about 2002, that we'll be looking for a shorter term, they'll be looking for a longer term. Is that what your expectation?
For more of a PEG fee, the public
yes.
access fee. We just addressed this recently with Mr. Grogan, and right now we get $1.50 PEG fee. Charter wants 20 cents at the most.
Well,
and
we've got leverage there, of course, but in terms of the length of the contract, they wanted the certainty of a longer contract. We wanted the flexibility of a shorter contract. Is it that model or that way of thinking still apply?
I believe so.
Okay. And do you think it's reasonable to expect we can get that resolved finally in 2018, if you're a betting man?
Well, I'm hoping prior to 2018.
In effect for 2018. Thank you.
Any other questions for Dennis? If not, though, you'd have two recommendations, one for each company.
I move the resolution regarding authorization for extension of existing cable franchise agreement for VAST broadband through December 31st of 2017.
Second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Steve. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. And the second resolution is regard to charter.
I move authorization for the extension of existing cable agreement for charter through December 31st of 2017.
Second.
I'll second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by John. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Agenda item number 17.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 17, consider authorization of the rental agreement for the acquisition of the wastewater treatment system biosolids dragline equipment, and authorize a lease agreement for the tractor lease. Glenn, are you going to start with this? I know we have Bob Van Moore here also. So.
Yes, I will. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Bob Van Moore and Larry Pofleet are here from the Wastewater Department to discuss with you something that they've been working on for some time. And the Wastewater Department regularly monitors, at least, and tries to suggest improvements to how they operate and reduce the cost of treatment. And currently we have an operation that includes biosolids application on several farm fields in the area. And I'd like to have them come up and explain this a little bit. I know that three of you have been given this presentation before, but I think it's important that you understand the impacts of what this decision or this recommendation could be, specifically on lowering costs in the department. So go ahead, Bob.
Thank you, Glenn, and welcome, Bob. Welcome, Larry.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just the cover letters, it's kind of long. It's kind of an extensive process, but it's a large part of our operation, the biosolids application. We generate about 3 million gallons of biosolids a year. That's the residuals off of the treatment of the wastewater. It's very good, stable fertilizer that we apply to farmlands for the beneficial reuse of the biosolids. Currently, that 3 million gallons takes about 2 to up to 3 months to land apply annually every fall. We have to wait till the crops come off and we start applying and try to get it in before freeze up. So it's really a timed event. Generally, it costs about $45,000 to $50,000 a year for manpower and labor and stuff like that, and fuel and equipment and stuff like that. We're kind of looking at, we have currently a 1999 biosolids ag chem applicator that we use. It's a big floater type injection piece of equipment, and we have 2 semis that we drive the loaded biosolids out to the field. We nurse it into the applicator, and then we inject it into the ground. That Agmt is up for replacement. It'll be 20 years old in 2019 is when we're looking at the CIP replacement of that equipment. It's about $450,000 to replace that, so very large capital expense. We're looking at different ways of doing that. Do we really want to spend that much money on a capital investment? Is there a better way to do that? So last year we hired a private contractor to dragline applicate our biosolids. The city owns an 80-acre pond just north of the treatment plant that we just recently tiled. Got that approved for biosolids application. And then just north of that and to the west, we have an additional about 240 acres. So we have about 320, and we can get another 50 acres approved real easily. So we have plenty of land right adjacent to the treatment plant. By dragline application, we would hook up a large pump right to our blue storage tanks. We have about 3.25 million gallons of storage right there at the treatment plant. We'd be able to hook this pump right there. You run a hose out to the tractor, and the tractor pulls this hose up and down the field, and you can apply non-stop as this pump is just pumping right out of our tanks. We don't have to load semis and haul 200 to 300 semis down the highway, by doing this. Very fast, very efficient. This contractor did it. He did about 2 million gallons in about 2.5 days. He was running 24 hours straight, but very, very good application. We've seen how it worked. It's very viable for us, and we started looking around. He's not interested in doing it again because for him that's a small job. He's used to doing the big dairy farms, doing 16, 20 million gallons at a time, so it's kind of, it takes out of his scheduling for the big projects. And then with our strict regulations that we have to monitor what we apply, he wasn't very comfortable with that. So it takes a lot of monitoring. We can do it, and we can do it right and monitor it closely and still be within the regulations. So we went around and we talked with 2 suppliers of this dragline application equipment, and the Hydro Engineering out of Norwood Young America was very receptive to us. Larry spent months working with them trying to figure out what we would need, what sizes we would need, trying to put together pricing of a package that would work for us. And along with that, we talked with both Kibble Equipment and Titan Equipment, and Kibble Equipment has a government equipment lease rate, which gives you municipalities a tremendous price on rental equipment. And so we could rent that tractor and not have that capital of a $400,000 tractor sitting around that we'd probably use a month a year, So very, very good for us on that one. After all said and done, Kibble Equipment gave us the proposal. They would build all the equipment that we need brand new to our specs. And they would lease it to us for 2017 because I don't have anything budgeted for this kind of amounts, with the option to buy that in 2018. So I'm proposing is to take the money out of capital reserve, wastewater capital reserve, and make 4 payments back for the total price of $223,000 for this equipment, with the lease agreement of $5,000 per year to Kibble Equipment, and they agreed to a 3-year upfront term that we could do this. Any of that rental would go back to the purchase of the price of the tractor if we decided after 3 years we wanted to do that, or we may even have the potential of continue on with the annual leases. So I guess with that we're looking at potentially saving $25,000 a year by being able to do this dragline equipment. We won't have 2 guys tied up for 2 to 3 months hauling biosolids. The safety factor of hauling 200 to 300 semis down the highway, everything is just playing out, so it's going to be a very good setup for us.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Larry. The questions, one question would be you keep the irrigator and the 2 tankers
We would propose to keep those. Couple issues there is by the time we isolate our biosolids and sample them, it takes about 3 weeks to get the results back. While we're doing that, we're also creating new biosolids, storing in another tank. So by the time we're empty, we're sitting on probably another 150,000 gallons of biosolids that we could retest and still get out in the fall. So by doing that, it'd be a small load, probably a week or two to haul and be done with that. Then we're completely empty, come freeze up. And we're also with the semis, the applicator itself, the trade-in value is probably $30,000, $35,000. Not much for capital getting back. The two semis that we have, we would have proposed maybe another alternative using those also for maybe hauling leachate in the future from the landfill into our treatment plant with our manpower and charging for that, and actually another revenue stream for that. So,
thank you, Bob. David?
Bob, we're applying the biosolids on farmland. You get some revenue for doing that?
We do. We charge $100 per acre for application fee for that.
So about how much does that bring in?
It brings in about $15,000 to $20,000 a year.
Really small. Is there
not real big, no.
Any market latitude for raising that?
Actually, Larry, every year Larry will look at commercial fertilizer rates and make sure that we're in line with that. We try to stay a little bit below because we have compaction issues also.
Those proceeds come back into the property.
Yes, they do. Yep.
If I may, Councilman, drawing on that depends on our permit that we have with the phosphorus removal and everything else coming downstream right to us. We might go back to this 6-7 million a year that we used to haul. Right now with our new ATAD system, like I say, we keep looking at newer things, new technology. This new ATAD has just been awesome. I mean, we took our biosolids from 6.5 million a year down to 2.5, 3. We got it in less than half. It's incredible. But with these new changes coming, we might be looking back. I get word from up above that it might be chasing me back to 6 million again. I don't want my equipment to be scaled down to 2 million. I need to have equipment that's going to handle this when the change makes, because my equipment might only be 2-3 years old, and there I sit stuck. So what do? We try to go ahead and cut this cost of moving down and do it a lot better than what we've been before.
And along those lines, Larry, and thank you for going into that, the expandability of the proposed dragline system would allow you to even do series pumping, and you could reach out a lot further than those very adjacent lands.
Correct.
That you're proposing. I mean, we could probably pull a 2.5 or 3 mile radius off of your station with that setup if we needed to, just with the addition of hose.
That's correct, Councilman. We'd be actually the equipment would be capable of up to 2 miles.
Yeah, we considered that when we were sizing this to know that in the future, if we have growth, that we're not sitting on something too small right away. So
thank you.
And it's not that we're buying an elephant here either. This is basically it's very small to like the commercial haulers, but for us this is what we need, and for us this would be wonderful.
Actually, right now it's going to be a short-term decision because we're not buying some of the expensive stuff, and we have the option to buy later. Correct. And so we can see how things work, and
yes,
if it works well, then we can make a long-term decision later on.
That was another one of the very good advantages of doing this the way we are. If everything fell apart this fall and we decided we didn't want the dragline equipment, we're not bound to buy that yet. So
we'd only own the hose and then have to market the hose, right?
Yep, then we'd have to resell the hose, but they wouldn't take the hose back. But
the question I have, Bob, you had somebody last year who was a private contractor did this, and he didn't want to do it this year because it's too small. Are there other private contractors out there who would entertain doing a smaller job?
There's a few other contractors around the state. They like the big jobs, and they're usually already kind of tied into the big cities like the Austins and Albert Lees and things like that. And for them to come over here, it would cost a lot more for them to apply it than actually what we're costing us with our biosolids applicator right now. So,
Mr. Mayor?
Right.
And then kind of a further answer to that too is that the industry timing for both the livestock industry and the municipal wastewater industry, that timing of application is the same. All the ag landowners and crop operators don't want spring applications, so everybody that has to land apply any kind of nutrient solids is all competing for that same window of time. So when those contractors turn on, it's pretty intense, and most of them, other than some flux in the industry, are pretty booked, and they have kind of their legacy customers. So having one slip in last year was probably really pretty lucky, because usually you're not going to get that.
Other questions? Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Bob.
Yep.
You have the recommendation, and let me also say I appreciate the amount of legwork and research that you all have done on this recommendation.
Mr. Mayor, I move authorization for acquisition of the biosolids dragline equipment from Hydro Engineering under a rental agreement in 2017 with the purchase option in 2018 in the amount of $223,000.
Second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by David. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes, and then the second action will be the lease agreement with Kibble Equipment of Marshall.
Mr. Mayor, I move that agreement also.
Second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Jim. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Agenda item number 18.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I want to thank Bob and Larry and the work that they did when they presented this also to the equipment committee. They've done a lot of work. They really had their stuff together, and really appreciate the research and the way that they went about looking at this and bringing it forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item number 18 is the ballpark parking lot entrance and sidewalk improvement project. We have a change order to consider. Change order number 1 with D&G Excavating. Glenn, I'll let you start with this. I know Preston Stendrew is also here.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Council. This is kind of an interesting project in that the original layout of the site included the access road going to the concessions building, but was never included in any bid. And when the contractor then was up doing the work both on the parking lot and on the concrete work coming up to the concessions building and around the concessions building, they indicated that they would provide a good price for changing. It wasn't really a change. It was installing concrete access drive instead of asphalt. Well, in our review of the system, I don't know if you've been there recently, but the top of the access road, the part towards the concessions building, has got 2 dugouts, one on each side of that driveway. And so you don't want a crown driveway coming in, runoff into those dugout areas. So that needed to be an inverted crown that comes away from the dugouts. And by the time you get to the bottom, you want to make sure then that at the bottom you reverse that crown to a regular crown section going up to the roadway. That's very difficult to do with an asphalt driveway. We got the prices for both. The price for the asphalt was about $12,500. It was about $4,000 plus more for concrete. And because of those differences, we elected to go with the concrete to be installed. So this was the amount of work for that driveway. If you have any questions, I certainly take them. And Preston is here too that could address any issues with the access drive.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. Questions?
I do have a question on this. How do you figure road bidding? How did the road get forgotten?
It wasn't forgotten. It was included in the site layout, but not in the bids for the parking lot, nor the area up by the concessions building. So it was not included in either one of those.
I guess that doesn't quite answer my question.
Okay.
How did it not get included in the bid packet then?
It was just not included. It was not considered in the quantities involving the access road. Now, if it would have been included, we would have still paid for that amount. It's not like we didn't want the access road. It was we wanted the access road. And so the cost was not included in the original bids, and so it was separate.
So who drew up, I guess what I'm getting, whose mistake
Our
is it that?
staff. Our staff drew up the plans and specifications for both the parking lot and the concessions building layout, not the concessions building, but the layout.
And then who determined concrete over, because I look at that, concrete's more expensive.
Yes, it is.
Does it necessarily last any longer? I walked downtown on our sidewalk, said, no, that concrete is less than 10 years old, and a lot of it's coming apart.
Yep. Concrete does generally last about 30% longer than an asphalt section, but the issue with the type of access it is for less rutting, for, I'll give you an example. For your own driveway, you would probably choose concrete.
Because we're forced to in Marshall. My own driveway, I choose pavement because it's cheaper.
No, you're not forced to in Marshall. You're forced to put it on the right-of-way.
Correct.
And the rest of it, generally, you'll do because it's cost-effective to do from your concrete in your garage to the street. The rest of the street, there's always a controversy, especially in Marshall, where you have two suppliers, one that supplies a lot of asphalt, one that supplies a lot of concrete. And you have that discussion as far as how come you're not designing more concrete streets. Well, typically it's that cost factor that comes into effect, that the initial cost sometimes is the major contributor to choosing asphalt. But I'll give you another example. Where you do have concrete streets, they tend to last longer. MnDOT has generally gone to concrete roads in many of their high traffic areas. Lyon County.
That's not necessarily true either, because 35 is being done in pavement.
I'll just say that in many times, even Lyon County has made that decision to go to concrete on several roads. In this case, because of the shape of the roadway, the drainage that we were looking for, the longevity of the road, our staff, we have a good staff of both inspection and design. And we believe that the concrete was the better alternative, and the timing was right. If we would have decided 3 weeks later to do concrete, mobilization would have been included as an additional expense from R&G Construction, even though he had a subcontractor doing the concrete work.
Well, and it comes down to, you say cost, and I look at the projects
Yeah.
I've worked on, we've chose pavement.
Right.
I think of the sleep in. We had that discussion when we built our sleep in. We chose pavement because of cost. I look at the citizens in Marshall are sick of change orders. And this is a hit the paper again that there's another change order out at the ballpark. And we'll all probably field calls. They're sick of these change orders. So why can't we go with the lower cost? I understand heavy traffic. That road's gonna get what? 5 cars a week on it?
It'll be garbage trucks and delivery trucks. That's the most traffic that will be on that street. It will not be normal residential street
I walked
traffic.
up there, and there's no dumpster now.
Right.
So, and I'm just looking at it as we deal with this, we got to answer to our citizens. First of all, like Glenn pointed out, how far in debt we are. Why are we spending extra money on something that we necessarily don't have to? Well, first of all, why wasn't it bid at the original project? And now why are we paying extra on something that was forgotten from the get-go?
So I'll just respond to you that there's 2 issues there. One is the initiation of change orders. Change orders on construction projects are an essential part of the job. And the city has hired me and the staff to take care of change orders or changes in needs of projects prior to the council approving the change orders. Now, maybe approving the change orders is a misnomer. Maybe it should be acknowledging change orders, but I have always done it by approval of change orders. I'll give you a good example that happened last Friday. We were on the water main replacement project on Highway 59 North, and we came through Bisbee's driveway, and it was absolute slop for the material that was going to go back in. None of us would want to wait for 2 weeks for a council meeting to approve what material to put back in that hole, because we want to make sure Bisbee's is up and operating the next day, not even next Monday, the next day. So we make a decision out in the field for fabric underneath and either good quality clay or granular material to go on top of that 4 feet deep. It's a very low price alternative, but it needs to be done then. In this case, though, Jim, I agree with you. It's a little bit different. It was a condition where the driveway should have been, we thought, was included in the original contract bids, but found it wasn't. We went back and checked the quantities very carefully, that quantity wasn't included in the asphalt quantities. And that's why you saw my comparison that it was a $4,000 difference. We hadn't bid either one of them. So I'm a pretty fiscal conservative person. I want to tell you that right up front. And we do spend a lot of time on what is best for the city of Marshall. And spending money isn't our prime objective. It's getting the best quality product. The most recent change orders we've had here in $1 million projects have been reductions or real close to even. That's our intent, always. And if you've got some suggestions, or if any of the other council members have suggestions of project development, we'd love to hear them, because we look into that every project we have. The next major one we have, of course, is the Commerce Park one. And we looked seriously at concrete there, but we settled, I hate the word, but we settled with asphalt.
Asphalt's a good product.
Is a good product. It's just not as long lasting, but will certainly be here longer than I will be. And that's something that we need to consider in all of our projects. Should it be concrete? Should it be asphalt? In this one, we had a real in-depth discussion of what that should be and the reasons for it. And I appreciate even the question of why in that particular case, because you better get an answer for that question.
Well, because then it goes into, and I know I visited with Carla about the budget on this project, and you were going to gather information. Are we under budget? Are we over budget? How does this change order fit into the budget of this whole project? Because now, usually, this is a large project, but I've worked on $5 million projects where our change orders totaled less than $10,000.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be tightened up, or we can. I would like to see change orders. Bisbee's, I understand that one. You got slop. You couldn't see that problem. This is a problem that was on the surface that could be seen. And then how does the change order fit into the budget of this whole project?
So I looked at the what are knowns, which is anything audited through 2016, and the expenses for the Merritt Arena and Ball Field, because all of them are not put together, they're different projects, but we've been budgeting them as one project, and we've been bonding together as one project. And so when you look at all the expenses and what's budgeted, we are currently almost $1.3 million under budget. We are almost $1.3 million under budget
out of a total
to budget expenses.
20 some odd million?
Yes. Our budget expenses are a little over 27 million, and we are slightly over 26 million expenses expended.
Carla, along those lines, I think you said that 2 projects, 1 budget. Is that what you said?
That is correct.
Is there a reason there wasn't 2 projects, 2 budgets?
I'm not sure. other than the history I do know of it, is it was presented to the community as a complex. And so it's the sports complex, and so the arena and the ball fields are one. And correct me if I'm wrong, Glenn.
That's right.
So in that sense, we don't know which project by itself is over or under budget because they're all thrown together.
The budget that we're working off of is ATS&R is keeping our budget together.
Right.
So, yes, I personally wouldn't be able to sit down.
Right.
I've attempted it.
Sure.
It's very.
And a lot of this happened before you took office.
Correct.
Right.
And it is good news that you're that much under budget. So.
We do have the good news of we are under budget. So.
But there's still there's bills still coming in because the project is not.
There are bills still coming in. We have contracts that have remaining of unpaid. For the ball field, the contracts remaining to be paid are at about $15,000.
But not 1.2 million.
Not 1.2 million.
Well, we want to add to that, though, is that there are at least 3 major items that haven't been bid yet, and were put on hold until we really defined where we were in the budget. Not that we have to spend everything, but I'll give you a good example. Maybe Preston is going to talk about this. The batting cage up at that facility is absolutely necessary if there was money for it. That's something that is part and parcel of a softball, baseball complex, period. Now, if there wasn't money for it, we wouldn't build it. But when you have teams coming to town, you're not going to send them to Legion Field Park to do batting practice to come out there and play. That's just an example. Preston, any other major items that we've been holding?
Yep. Thanks, Glenn. Thanks, Mayor and Council. First, I'm going to revert back to the concrete. Another thing to think of, once the fencing company comes back, that's going to be all fenced in across the end towards Cruz. And there's going to be footing and stuff. Tarring around that doesn't work very good. And second of all, both sides of the driveway have 35 to 40 irrigation heads directly right next to the concrete. I mean, they're sitting right up against it when they tar. You can't control it. It spills over. The heads are buried. What other options or they get hit when they mill and then we're replacing them. So that's just another reason for long-term maintenance stuff. As far as stuff on the project, cost-wise, I have been working diligently on certain items to save money. The pavers, we're somewhere close to $80,000 under what the bid price was to do it for my staff to do it. I installed the scoreboards, which saved us $45,000. We pulled the lights out and had them installed by ourselves versus going through the architect. We did all the irrigation on ourselves without going through the architect, and stuff like that. So I'm trying to make
pumping station that was.
Yep, that was originally $400,000 for the architect, and we ended up getting it for $199,000. So I mean, I know like this is a $4,000 add-on, but we have been trying where we can to cut money too, and we've been doing a lot of the work.
And I visited with Carla about that, and she gave you great credit that you're doing a wonderful job. And I guess my point on this is it got left out of the project, and that's the part that gets me. There's a major part of the project, and I'm not picking on your staff, but there's a major part that got left out, and it's a change order. It's just, I hate change orders.
Yeah. Nope. And I can agree with that. The other part of that would be, I don't remember, we bid it as a whole package where everything was included, and then I think we bid it again, and then we pulled out the irrigation, and then we pulled out the lights, and then we pulled out the concrete work. So all of a sudden, it got broke into 10 different pieces, and got a little messy or whatever, but in the end, it was a cost savings.
Along those lines, then you can almost say that this is a separate project by itself, and then if it is, then it's really not a change order. It's just whether or not we should do this project. Right. And I think all of us probably would agree you need an access road.
Right.
And so do we build an access road or not? And if we do we make it concrete or asphalt? And that's the big discussion here is, do we spend the extra money to get concrete or do we go with the asphalt? Well, the access road, I mean, is it going to be used by people walking to the different stadiums, or is it just going to be used by trucks alone, or?
Yep, it'll just be a service drive,
So it's
essentially.
not going to be used like a sidewalk or anything like that?
No,
So.
I mean, if you had a tournament, you could open it and let people walk through there, but it's going to be hard to control access, where if you come up the north side or from the parking lot, then you literally have one access to the complex, where if you open up other stuff, then you got to have extra ticket takers and
You'll
stuff
be
like that.
walking down that access road to get to the dugouts.
Yep.
And to clarify, Glenn, this access road is already done. We're voting on a change order that's already done.
Correct.
Which is why Glenn said it's an
I understand that, yeah.
acknowledgement of a change order that has occurred.
But to Glenn's point, how you said if it's a change order, or really it's just an addition to the project because it wasn't included in the bid.
Because you did break it down into different parts of projects.
Yep.
And this is just one more
One
project.
part
that
of
has
the
to be
project,
done.
and we thought the
And if you do it
additional
that way,
4,000 was worth for the
If you
concrete.
do it that way, it sounds better.
Yeah, I agree.
And the other point that you also alluded to is that this was bid out a couple times and we rejected the bids because they were way too high.
Yep.
And we were able to bring that down because of the internal work that was really done by our staff, mainly your staff. I think last week, I think you told me you had like 14 of your staff that were working on
Yep, yeah, it varies. Today I think I had 8, but I think roughly we've laid 26,000 pavers so far, and we've cut about 6,000. So it's time consuming. There's no quick way to do it, and we have other stuff going on. You know, we're getting people calling every day. How come you're not out there? Well, we can't have my whole staff out there every day because nothing else is getting done then.
So my question on that whole change order, again, and having gone out there and hearing the conversation tonight, the one question I have, especially now that it's not going to be people driving, it's just going to be service entry more or less, why did we need concrete all the way up to Tiger Drive? Why couldn't you put crushed granite down there, which adjudicates the problem of the irrigation heads, because they go through rock. I can see the concrete to the dugouts where those sidewalks go, and that's fine, you know, concrete therein, but the crushed gravel or crushed granite or something, crushed pea rock, hell, wood chips.
I think based on the elevations there, Tiger Drive comes way down, and all that water comes from up top down through the dugouts. When it hit that crushed granite, it's all going to wash to the grass or onto the field because that's how it dumps at the end. And if you put a catch basin there, it would just wash and fill the the storm lines. I don't know, we never really talked about it, but that'd be two things that come to my mind right away, just based on slope. And I've been out there when it's raining, there's a lot of water going.
And then the only other question I had was the depth of the concrete, because that is some deep concrete.
Yep. 6 inches to allow for the Coke truck to back that truck up to the concession
The
stand.
garbage truck.
Yep, 4 inches would
I
crack.
can show you what thin asphalt looks like if you want to come and drive down my alley. Well, but, you know, put 4 inches of asphalt or 4 inches of concrete.
It would be broke.
My other argument is if we're really concerned about cost, then we should be doing asphalt sidewalks.
Fine.
Any other questions before we move to a motion here?
Did you say the project's already done?
That's what caught my eye as I seen it came up on here, and I was actually at Cruise Motors getting some service, and I was like, wow, this is because that's where I walked the whole. It's a beautiful ballpark. You're doing a wonderful job. It's just one of these that I understand. There's emergency situations for change orders, and there's situations like this where, you know, maybe we should throw this out and see what the feeling of the council is. It's not much, but if we're going to start bringing our debt down, we need to start someplace. And you know, I understand there's people making. We do have people hired to make decisions, and that's fine. But this is an area where the city, where my constituents have hammered me since I got elected, bring up change orders. They're just sick of change orders on this arena ballpark complex. And now there will be another one in the paper tomorrow.
If you do call it a change order, and you don't have to, but if you do, there's going to be one no matter what. It just depends on the amount of the change order. Is there a reason that it was done before council approval?
I just kind of think that change orders, that's to keep
But I
the
mean,
project
the project's
going.
I mean, you did the
Well,
concrete
there's
before.
Yes, there is.
What's
Yes,
that?
the mobilization. The contractor who was there said, being he was there, they would give us a good price on doing the work when they were there. If we didn't do it then, we would have asked for new contracts for anyone else to do. We were called for bids for a new contract. And we believed that this was the best price at the time.
So if we don't approve this, then you'll be paying for this?
No, if you didn't approve it.
I'm joking here.
I know, but we turned it over to Dennis. Yeah,
Okay.
that's where it would go.
Good discussion. If there's anything else, otherwise I will entertain a motion.
I will make a motion to approve this new project change order, whatever you want to call it, and proceed on with the little addition that we had kind of this discussion a few years back when you were working, I think it was Huron Road over in next to Schwann's going into the industrial park.
Mm-hmm.
And that decision was made to put concrete in there rather than asphalt, and that was rather contentious.
Mm-hmm.
I drive that every day, several times a day. That's one of the best decisions I think we made. So I'm in favor of the concrete anyway, so I make that motion.
I'll second.
Motion by John, seconded by David to approve the order with D&G Excavating of Marshall, resulting in a contract increase of $16,646. Discussion on the motion.
The only thing I'm going to comment is on these change orders, and I'll be voting no on this simply because I think we need to rein in change orders. We need to get our understanding. Incidents come up. I'm a contractor. Incidents come up, but this is one that should have been in the bid. Plain and simple. The road that should have been laid out and been done that way.
Other discussion on the motion?
I think the concern there, the problem there is that we made the mistake, not somebody else. And so it's not like we can collect money from somebody else. And again, I point out the fact that, you know, we need the access road. It's just a matter of whether it's asphalt or cement. And if you know, you either think cement's better, concrete's better, or you think that the asphalt is better. And I guess I'm not real happy that the project's all done before we vote on it. But I happen to believe that concrete would be the best solution to this problem.
Other discussion on the motion, Craig?
Thank you, and Mr. Mayor and council members, and I agree with Councilman Barracola. I think that we hire staff, we hire professional staff, we lay out expectations, we have to give them the freedom to act and the tools, and then we support them, and mistakes happen. I'm sure that nobody feels any worse about this than the staff that you know, left it out, that missed it, and that's too bad. And I honestly also support the idea of concrete. I think there's a reason why we put concrete aprons on driveways in the right-of-way on our projects, and I think there's a good reason why we do concrete sidewalks, and I support that, and I appreciate it.
Other discussion on the motion?
Will the concrete that's chipped out there be fixed already? Because right at the road, it's already a big chunk taken out of it.
Sure.
Other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. At this time, we'll call for a 5-minute recess.
Well, you were pretty
They're
antisocial.
good jokes too.
Yeah, that's relative.
We are on agenda item number 19. This is to consider the adoption of the ordinance with Shearholtz and Associates for a map amendment to rezone a portion of Broadmoor Valley, First Edition, 707 Genesis Avenue. Glenn?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is what we had talked about earlier in the meeting with the approval of the plat. They're looking at rezoning the entire lot that they're adding on to the existing to R2. And it's coming from R5, which is the manufactured housing district, to R2, 1 to 4 family residential. We would recommend approval.
Thank you, Glenn. Questions the council has?
Glenn, do you have the little?
No, I don't, but.
Oh, it's up on the podium.
Okay. So is there another picture? I think there's 2 more pictures. Yeah. Okay. That's okay. It's okay. It's this area right down here. This was the manufactured home district. This is Genesis. This is Scott. North is to the right. And this is the 50-foot addition that they're looking at rezoning to R2. All of the surrounding property is zoned R2.
We took action on these parcels earlier tonight.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I'm just, give me a second here, I'm just looking for my information here, but do you have that map? Was it agenda item number 5, was it, or? Which one was
the plat itself, you mean?
Yeah, well,
it was
agenda item 4.
Item 4.
Okay. Could we call up that map once from number 4?
Okay, just a second. Before you go there, when you go back to the map, what you'll be seeing is this lot and this additional lot.
Right.
So it'll be this larger lot and this 50 feet. Okay, go ahead.
It'll be turn to quarter turn also.
That's right.
So I think actually you don't have to go back to that. You should have that on the
previous one.
If you go back to the agenda item, isn't it zoning PDF? No, it's not that one.
Anyway, it's this one right here,
Yes.
this map.
Uh-huh.
And I'm looking at that, and it's kind of confusing because there's lot 1 and lot 1, and
Oh.
lot 1 is over lot 2, and
Okay, go ahead and open the previous one. And the reason for that is the surveyor that put together the plat has to include the previous lots and blocks as well as the new lots and blocks. So that one lot 2 that you see there is of the previous subdivision, and lot 1 is the new lot, including old lot 2 and the additional 50 feet. So if you can you go back to the plat from item 4?
it's item 4, right?
Okay, but I can explain that to you that's why both of those lot numbers are on there. One is from Broadmoor Valley Broadmoor Valley Edition, and this is Broadmoor Valley First Edition, and both subdivisions and both lot numbers and both block numbers have to be on that print. Now, when the plat comes out, the writing, the printing for the original subdivision will be lighter than the new subdivision. But just so you know, the new subdivision is lot 1, block 1 of Broadmoor Valley First Edition. That will be one lot, and that's how it will be. The rezone will only be for the 50 feet on the eastern edge. Actually, all of lot 1 will be rezoned to R2. okay, all of Lot 1, which is these two lots. Because right now, there's currently a lot line there before the rezone.
My concern was that the agenda item number 4, we referred to Lot 2, but that was the old
That was old
subdivision.
Lot 2.
And now we're referring to it as Lot 1 even. So what was Lot 2 is now Lot 1.
And that's
the new
why we
subdivision.
did that first, so that makes this correct.
Okay, that was my concern. It looked like we were in one place calling it Lot 2 and the other place calling it Lot 1. Okay, thank you.
Very good. Any other questions for Glenn? If not, you have the recommendation.
Mr. Mayor, I would move to accept the recommendation.
Second.
Motion by Scott, seconded by Jim. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Agenda item number 20 would be to consider the...
Can we just point of order, the motion was made by Steve, not Scott.
Did I say Scott?
Yes, you did.
Scott helped.
Scott.
Just don't call me late for dinner.
Okay. Thank you, Doctor. We will, agenda item number 20, consider approval of the temporary 3.2% malt liquor license for the Marshall Baseball Association. Questions about this? Is there a motion?
I move approval.
Second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Steve.
Not Scott.
Discussion on the motion.
Just a question, if I'm missing it, perhaps I'm looking at the license, where will this, is it this be at Legion Field?
No, it's the Channel Parkway softball complex. Because of the extended play schedule there,
Yeah.
did they have their license extended?
Thank you.
Is that your question,
No, they're not getting the extra time. It's just that
The location has changed, and the licenses are specific to the location and the use, correct, Mr. Mayor?
That's correct.
okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Agenda item number 21. Commission Board Liaison reports. The Fire Relief Association met this morning. This is actually their annual report. So first off, the performance of the fund was roughly 6.5% for year-to-date performance of the fund. So given that they have a conservative directive for their fund management, that was very good. We also received the audit report. They have their total audit report or coverage is roughly just over 96% coverage of their entire obligation for retirement benefits. And that would assume that every single person would retire. They would have a 96% coverage, which is actually very good. As part of this too, their fund is, because it's 96% coverage and not over 100%, at this time, they are not eligible to apply for an increase in the benefit amount. This year and some years we've dealt with changing of their bylaw amendments to increase the benefit. So that will be what it is now, which is just over $5,600 per year of service. The other factor then is the contribution for the city, which is actually determined by a formula that's defined in state statute. And the components of that formula are the fund value itself, the rate of return on that, the state aid, which is actually a surcharge on automobile insurance. I think it's 2% that is distributed to fire relief associations. And then the remainder then is city contribution. So it's a calculation, and then we get to the bottom line. That's what the city's responsible for. So this past year, we had an amount of, I believe it was $48,000 was the city contribution, and then based on the formula right now, and this is still an estimate because there's some final numbers of some of the projected payouts of anticipated retirements that happen yet this year of firefighters, but based on the estimate right now, our contribution would be about $30,315. So it would be less than it was last year. So that's the number Carla has then to plug into the budget. So, Carla, anything you want to add about Relief Association?
No.
The Regional Development Commission, several things. First off, they have their annual transportation meeting is tomorrow afternoon. Glenn, I think you're going to that. David, I think you're going to that. I may or may not be able to go to that depending on the ribbon cutting schedule at the Camden Regional Bike Trail. The Regional Development Commission does have their annual meeting, though, in Pipestone, and I think everyone has received an invitation. You're fully welcome to go to that. I'll be attending that also.
Mr. Mayor, what time is that ribbon cutting tomorrow at the bike trail?
10 o'clock. And I know we talked earlier, you're planning to bring your bike in.
I'll try to, yeah.
Wear a helmet.
I'll have to wear my wife's. I'll have to wear
So with that, then we'll move to you, Craig.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Library board met yesterday afternoon, and you heard Michelle's report to the council, and I think that was good news. I feel really good about the direction that we've gone. There's again a lot of conversation coming in about Plum Creek. There's a lot of operational and management concerns with Plum Creek. There's building concerns with Plum Creek. There's kind of a lot of legacy attitude amongst certain members of the Plum Creek board that continue to cause a little bit of indigestion for us. And we're trying to work through that with a positive attitude, and we'll continue to do that. The good news is that I think we're all in a pretty good position with dealing with it. But as things come more to the surface or to light there, I'll try to keep track of those and report them back. And then also the budget committee met, which is made up of 2 county commissioners, the county administrator, Mayor Byrne, myself, and then it's typically the city administrator, but it was Mayor Byrne and I that met again with the county representatives and Michelle and Lou at the library and discussed budget proposals, and we'll be bringing some things forward. But know that part of our efforts here, and the county has been very sincere about moving towards to get back to the 1/3, 2/3 contribution. And so I think that's very positive. I think the feeling that I got from the county representatives, while it hasn't gone to a vote, and they certainly can't speak for the commissioners, I just think that the entire view of the library and the level of comfort with where they're at has gone up substantially. I think Michelle and the board have done an excellent job of bringing that operation forward and up, and I feel really good about where it is. And the first year that I was on that board, I didn't know if I felt real good about being on the board, and I can tell you that I'm there. I'm glad I'm there, and I requested to be back on there for good reason, and I feel good about what Michelle is doing and the rest of the board about bringing forward a valid budget proposal. It's based on actual operational costs, and then she's got some continued development proposals that'll be in those budget options as we come forward. And I guess, Mr. Mayor, I think that's probably about a good place to leave it, don't you think?
I think so. Just so, that 1/3, 2/3, that currently we're at about 30/70, but the 1/3, 2/3 is kind of a historic that was based on library patronage and usage, not only for the Marshall Library, but also the branches in Cottonwood.
Right.
And Valentin are included in that total. And then when it probably wasn't even intentional when that 1/3, 2/3 went away. It had more to do with some of the issues of in or out of Plum Creek and what the minimum level of maintenance that the county are obligated to do. So it was really factors out of the control. And then I think everybody would, in the meetings that we have had, and there's been 2 of those in the last couple of weeks, that that there's strong interest in really getting back to that formula. And then I think in addition to that, there's also interest, it's a much smaller number, but for the Lyon County Museum support, we're very near to just the opposite ratio, where the county would provide 2/3 of the support and the city would provide 1/3, and we have a little bit of adjustment to actually get to that. So
right.
It would certainly be in the city's interest if both of those were
right.
1/3, 2/3, 2/3, 1/3.
Mm-hmm. Yep, thank you. And that's, the Amateur Sports Commission chose to not meet this month. That meeting would have been today at noon. That didn't happen. And I have not had anything with the Emergency Communications Board to report.
Steve?
Go ahead. Craig, does the county provide aid to other libraries in the county?
Absolutely. They're part of the, because Cottonwood and Gallatin are part of the MarshallLyon County Library System, but they also provide Tracy and Minneota. And those are independent libraries that they contribute that we don't. But I will say that we are sharing some of our electronic collection, and Michelle touched on that. And that's been a decision that we've had, that it's really not a whole lot for us, because those other libraries, because they're part of the Plum Creek part, they can come and get a Marshall card, or they can get a card at those other libraries or any library within that system and say that they want to list Marshall as their home library, because they may work in Marshall and it's more convenient for them to pick up books. Right now, that causes us some problems with Plum Creek because of the way that they count and report, and we're trying to get the numbers of actual members within our tax area or townships, and Plum Creek's really reluctant to give that out. There's still a lot of legacy issues back there, and I don't want to boil this up again, but I want to assure the council and the constituents that we're looking at that, and we're working very hard to make that as transparent and equitable as possible. But there's a lot of benefit, plus there's a legal obligation for us to be in that Plum Creek network as far as the county's concerned. But yeah, to answer your question, they do support other libraries besides the MarshallLyon County Library.
And my concern would be if they increase our level of funding for the Lincoln or the Lyon County Marshall Library, would they in turn decrease the funding for the other towns?
And of course,
I wouldn't want that to happen.
Right, and I can't answer specifically for them, but I can tell you that has never been in the conversation. So I would be shocked if they did that. I don't know what their contribution is. I haven't looked at their audit on that, but that's never come up. In fact, we've worked. Mr. Ritter, Steve Ritter, is the county's representative, the county board's representative. He and I are the two elected officials on the library board, and it's very much about equity and increasing and leveraging. So, and I feel the same way. As your representative on that board, I encourage any kind of legitimate cooperation that we can and outreach we can do with the libraries that are not specifically ours, but still within the county or in the area, because I think that's a net benefit to everybody.
I would like it to look like we're taking money from other libraries to benefit ourselves.
Yeah,
so.
that's a good point, and I agree, and I think that would be a philosophy of all of us.
Okay,
thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Council, neither one of my groups met this week.
Housing Commission met yesterday, but I was out of town, so I wasn't able to attend.
Mine have not met since the last time, but since I was not here last meeting, just want to remind everybody that MMU did pay off a bond using reserves, savings of about $500,000, and I think a reduction in city debt bill about a little over $3 million. Was that right? Okay.
Police Advisory Board met on June 28th and approved a 6-month hire roster based on the interviews and screenings we've done earlier in the summer. And the airport board is not meeting this month.
Mine did not meet.
Then to agenda item number 22. Agenda item number 22, council member individual items. Jim, let's start with you.
I had this conversation at the start of the meeting, Bob, but Glenn, can you answer when is the sidewalk on Legion Field Road going to be put back together? And I know it's nothing to do with the city, it's to do with the railroad.
When it's going to be complete?
Yeah.
We don't have a schedule yet. They did come in and worked on the one railroad crossing, but I would expect within the next month. But we do not have a specific schedule with the roadmaster.
I think your question is the, are they repaired the crossing, but they didn't complete the sidewalk at that time, so.
Right. We don't have,
no idea.
No, I don't. But I can check.
Thank you. That's all.
David?
2 items. My family and I attended the parts of the 4th of July program at Independence Park. We were impressed by the way that activity has expanded and improved in terms of additional attractions and activities that help draw families. Reminded me more of the scale and the setting of the Night Out program, which uses the same location, has now many of the same activities. And also we appreciated the expansion of the variety of food options. The one, apart from the ice cream stand, the one trailer we had last year had 17 items, and every single one of them featured deep fat fried. And while I like that personally, there are many, including my own wife, who that there's a dietary problem there. So we had a nice expansion of that, which I think bodes well for attracting a variety of community members in the future. So kudos to the Parks Department or Community Services and others who helped make that possible. Second item, I'll just admit it. I follow the Census Bureau, not on Twitter, but I do get their emails. And they put out information, and I don't know if this has come or who it's come to, but soon we'll be getting information on the local update of census addresses. 39,000 local governments across the country. And I don't know if this would come to you, Jane, or to the city administrator, or Glenn. Your office would have something to do with tracking. What they need is an accurate accounting of all the extant residential addresses. Of course, that's a moving target as things may change. But I'll just say, all of y'all will be looking for this when it comes. It's supposed to be distributed, well, beginning July 14th, they'll be mailing these materials. So that's coming. That's all.
Yeah, okay, first off, I didn't look to see if it was in a discussion at the last meeting, but there was a editorial in the paper regarding signage on County Road 7 and the bike path. I think that was probably a good idea, having driven through there and whatever, that, you know, there is a, like you say, there is a sign that says bike path, but the fact that somebody's crossing over County Road 7 to continue on the bike path, if there's some additional signage that we could consider or something there, I think that'd be a good idea. And again, I'm not sure if it was brought up in the past or not. So
I can respond. I've met with Aaron Van Moore of the county. That's a county road. Okay. And they're going to be doing a seal coat. And there are 2 signs out there, one coming from each direction on the bike path. And typically, the signs are still up for the bike path crossing on Highway 23. That has been requested to be removed, but never removed. So where does the bike path stop and end in that location? We do have a bike path that comes down along Channel Parkway, Country Club Drive, that dead ends, I'll say dead ends onto County Road 7. Should that go north to the bike path? I'll say, yes, it should go north to the bike path. So really the bike path, the way we look at it now with the new connection through the Lyon County, is a bike path connection on County Road 7 from Country Club Drive to the bike path, not up to Highway 19.
No, but I think
and that's where it goes now.
You're bringing up is from
the crossing.
The crossing.
Okay,
itself.
so now let's talk about that. So really, that's where the bike path exists or will exist after the seal coat is done. Now, to get that crossing, even MnDOT says we do not want you putting crosswalk bars or stripes on Highway 19 where our major bike path crossing is. It's not located at an intersection, and they do not want that installed. So what is the issue of installing a crosswalk? Well, in that location, would you do it twice? Because really, to go, let's say I'm going to go to Sheila's out on the west side. Technically, you're supposed to come up to the County Road 7, cross, ride with traffic, and go and then go down the bike path. Coming from the west, you should come to County Road 7, cross, and ride with traffic on the right-hand side to the bike path. So you'd have two crossings within 100 feet. And not only, right now, that's how it's signed. But how do you designate that to really work right? And I know some of you are bicyclists. What you want to do is go against traffic coming from the west and turn down that going the wrong way until you cross, rather than crossing, go down and go over. I'm just saying that's how most people operate there. Sheila, maybe if you have a comment.
Depends on if you're walking or riding.
Yes.
You walk against traffic, you ride with.
That's correct. And so you need two crossings.
Kitty corner angle.
Yeah,
So
go ahead.
I think one other thing maybe to look into, and I understand what you're saying about the, putting the crosswalk across, and you don't put two of them, and where do you put one, where's it going to be? But an activated crossing sign that, we have the sign there saying it's a crossing, but we do have, there is a motion activated that if someone's coming up on it, whether they're on a bike or a baby stroller or walking, that it would activate the flashing. So the trucks that are coming down County Road 7 at least, have an indication that someone might be,
See, and I think that's a bigger safety solution than figuring out what side of the road the bike should be located and where the crosswalk should be. It's maybe just, there's the bike path signs. One is on each side of both of it. One is on each side of both of them, I'll say. And if those were flashing when somebody was coming, that might be the best solution.
There's also a vegetation, there's a big lilac shrub that's kind of in the way too. That takes
It depends upon which way you're coming from, yeah.
If you're coming from the west. On the trail, yeah.
And
I have seen that too. There's either a tree branch or something that needs to be cut back.
And that might be on county right of way. If it's not, then it's that private property, the person is very concerned about things like that. And so we can talk to Aaron about that contact, but that's an issue.
Okay. And as long as I'm on signs and crossings, I don't know if anybody else has noticed, but at the corner of C Street, just over here in Maine, that the audio is quit on there. You push the button, you used to get wait, and it would tell you when you could cross. There's no audio anymore. So that just...
At C Street?
At C Street.
All directions?
All four directions. So, and, okay, still on trails a little bit. I noticed in our reconstruction, I didn't bring it up during our bonding, but I noticed in our reconstruction, we have nothing in there for reconstruction of trails until 2021. And that might be, even with asphalt, that you can get weeds to grow up in the middle of it. That's a long time. We may want to take a look at that and consider it. And then last item is for Dennis. What's the progress on the 911 house on Main Street with Mausoleum? Wasn't there supposed to be a eviction or mosque? Sorry, wrong one.
The leaders of that group met with me a week ago. They are trying to purchase the former Taekwondo building on.
Oh, okay, around the corner.
Still not much of a larger facility, though. They're working with a local realtor. but no further progress. There's still concerns about money issues, no payment of interest. There, so no, we have not commenced eviction actions.
Oh, okay, so that's out there, but it's not pending. Okay. That's it.
Is there going to be a time limit on how long we give them to make change?
Well, we have extended the previous time limits. We have not been very serious about it, but it may be very well time to get serious.
I know you and Cal Brink, and I know I've met with them. I mean, there's been a lot of effort going into this, right, to try to find, a solution that would be helpful.
We get complaints every week.
I mean, they own a bare lot. The best location would be for them to build a facility on their existing property on Birch Street, a large facility, but they have not come up with a financing mechanism or package yet to be able to do that.
Thank you. That's it.
Okay. Greg?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. An item that I brought up earlier regarding noise and the refuse haulers. I think there was probably some contact with Mr. Ritter. Glenn, did you have contact with him the next day?
I did not.
Okay, well, then he must have watched the live stream, because I got a call from him the next day. And on his own, and I wanted to assure him that this wasn't a request from council. I was only bringing an issue up, but he voluntarily changed their route times to start at 6 a.m.
Yeah, and I had a conversation about that after that meeting.
Okay, you and Dan did? Okay, great, because he called me and we had a conversation, and I told him again, I said, I just wanted to bring up the concern for out of due diligence, but I'm not asking you to make any changes, because I think there's a argument on that both ways, and on why it makes sense to do pickups. And I said, I know you can't shut the backup alarms off, but he stepped up and we had a good conversation, and I really applaud him for taking that step to make an adjustment to that. So that piece has been handled. And then I just want to say that I had a phone call earlier this week from one of our constituents in Ward 3, and a number of different items, and there were some that were park and rec and community service, and I asked her to please contact them, and then there were a few other concerns that we talked about, and I think I was able to answer her questions about that and give her some background. And then the real positive piece was I got a very, very positive comment about the activities, changes, and improvements at the library, which I thought was really nice to hear. So, and that's really all I have. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council.
The only thing that I have is we talk about the old Kmart building, and I've noticed that the for sale sign still says for sale instead of sale pending or anything like that. So, is there a status in that?
Property, yes. I mean, it closed.
Sold,
right.
Yeah.
So it must be the realtor not putting up the sold sign.
Right.
Good to see activity.
It would be good to see that, yeah. 'Cause that's got big visibility right on the highway.
I have nothing.
We'll move then to the next agenda item, 23. Oh, before we do that, it's been alluded to several times, but ribbon cutting, 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, Camden Regional Bike Trail. The location of the ribbon cutting will be roughly by where the driving range is. So. Staff reports, Sheila?
Thank you. Today, staff and council had an opportunity to meet with the city search consultant for the administrator position. Gary Wires was here on site gathering information. He will be returning on July 25th to present the profile, the job description, and the process for council's approval. So we will prepare for that, and Kathy Lee and I are assisting him in the meantime with updating the position profile for the position. Kathy Lee has let me know that she has scheduled the City Council work session on goals and priorities for July 31st at 5:30 at the Merit Center, so hopefully each of you has received that invitation. MnDOT was here earlier tonight talking about the open house for the Highway 23 Marshall projects. Yesterday and today, they started a social media push to notify members of the public. Alex Peterson has also in turn been resharing that information with all of the city Facebook and Twitter users so that we can help get that message out. We have made a conditional job offer for the training facility coordinator at the Merit Center. Pre-screening activity has been initiated. If that goes as planned, we do hope for a July 24th start date. Once that pre-screening is completed, I will definitely post more information for the council on the candidate. And I'm not sure if this was included in the most recent administrative brief, but I wanted to follow up. There was a question last time as to our stage and whether there was a train-the-trainer option available. Staff have talked to their staff, and unfortunately the response we received is that the stage operators have to be certified by Stage Line due to liability reasons. There is not at this time a train-the-trainer program in place for us to utilize. And we handed out earlier this evening a working draft of a budget timeline. That document, of course, can be amended over time, but that provides us a starting point for budget discussion. So we'll be working on, Carla and I will be closely working together on the budget to make sure that we start meeting regularly with the council on the items. That's all I have.
Okay. Question for Sheila? Thank you, Sheila. Carla, I'm going to turn to you. You've been providing the kind of monthly updates to the city administrator as well as myself on the Tallgrass liquor, and most recent, like 6 month to date, the sales are up 14% as compared to 2016, which was up 13%.
That is correct. We continue to do well out there and increase. And so there's options we can look at going forward as well as with that increase in revenue.
Well, as far as one of those options would be either, returning the contribution to the city, or
we can increase the contribution to the city, or look at the option of reducing our debt. I will be working with Springstead on our options for reducing debt and what avenues and to what extent we have available to us.
Thank you.
Carla, I know it's early, but what was the turnout on Sundays?
Well, the first Sunday is going to be your first, and it happened to fall on a holiday weekend. So really, it's a lot. You can have a lot of those just doing it because I can. So yeah, we saw approximately about 400 people going through, making a purchase, and the following Sunday it was down to about 230. So I contribute that high amount holiday weekend and the first Sunday availability in Minnesota. So we'll be following that and giving some information.
You indicated again that sales are up. At this point, we don't know whether or not the sales are up because of the location or because of the expensive building. I mean, if we had a less expensive building, the sales might still be up because it's a more favorable location and better parking. But there's no way we know what the real reason is for sales being up.
Not without doing some kind of survey to get a little better feel for that. Right. We can look at the sales and say
because I think some of the concerns citizens have is that we've got a Taj Mahal for a liquor store. And do we really need to spend that much money for a liquor store? At least that's what people tell me.
I've not heard that, but
no, I haven't either. I've heard a lot of people talk about it's really a nice liquor store, but I don't know that came as a complaint. I thought it came as a compliment. Yeah.
Well, and on that comment, Glenn, is the liquor store is built, so now we need to embrace it and make it profitable.
Right. I wouldn't be.
Either that or sell it, one or the other.
And rebuilding it.
No, I'm not. I'm just saying, did we need to spend that much money for that liquor store? And I think people question whether or not we needed to.
Oh, and I agree. It's one of those where, like I said, it's built. That we can't answer that question. We can't. But it's built now, so we need to embrace it and make it as profitable as we can.
But once you make decisions, again, feedback is always important.
Absolutely.
And you have to decide, just because we did it, was it the right decision or not? We need feedback to determine whether or not
On
it was the
future
right
projects, you're correct, absolutely.
Okay, Glenn?
Nothing further. Thank you.
Dennis? Okay, we'll move then to agenda item number 26. Pending agenda items, you have the pending agenda items for your review. We'll move to agenda item number 27, the information items, including the building permits. And then agenda item number 28 would be determination to go in closed session for attorney-client privilege. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
I so move that.
Second.
Motion by Steve, seconded by David. Discussion? If not, all those, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes.